The Petroleum Products Pricing Regulation Agency has finally decided to abandon any pretense towards discharging that responsibility, which it defines as the identity. What that means, according to oil and gas industry regulator, is that marketers will henceforth bear the responsibility of fixing the pump price of petrol under a deregulated regime. Reactions to this development have been swinging between two extremes, with critical stakeholders in the organized private sector throwing their combined weight behind it, while there has also been a school of thought which promotes the belief by this decision that the federal government has knowingly or unknowingly provided a recipe for chaos and unprecedented volatility in the downstream sector, with its dire implications for small businesses and the informal sector. Joining us now to have a wider discussion around this matter is Dr. Diran Fawibe, oil and gas industry veteran and chairman and chief executive, International Energy Services Limited. It's a pleasure and a joy having you on the program, sir.
Thank you.
Sir, help us make sense of all of this deregulation debacle.
Well, thank you very much. Let me break it down. What government has done is fundamentally, in order, we have to commend the president for having the courage and political way to take this decision once and for all. It's like what people used to say, you tread where the angels fear to tread. This problem of petroleum prices, the regulation, has been with us for many years. Let me take you to memory lane. The uniform pricing system and fixing of price in the way we were doing it up to the announcement of this deregulation started in October 1973 when we embarked on uniform pricing system. And that was when Nigeria was having a lot of money to throw about in meeting some obligations. In Nigeria, we said that Nigeria was having control of commanding heights of the economy. But the framework for price regulation and the uniform pricing system was meant to be a temporary arrangement, but it has subsisted for about 4 decades. So what government has done now is to actually liberalize the industry, the downstream sector of the economy. Before the policy of regulation and uniform pricing system, it was the marketing companies that used to fix petroleum prices under the guidance of the Federal Ministry of Mines and Power at that time, or Ministry of Petroleum Resources. And it was based on certain fundamentals. As you know, even when the product were being imported into the country before 1965, when the first refinery came on stream, there was a pricing arrangement by the oil companies that used to import petroleum products into the country. But it was under the supervision of the Ministry of Petroleum to ensure that the marketers did not exploit Nigerian consumers. Now, the price regulation has created a lot of problems. It started calmly and but over the years, we've seen what Nigerians have made of this policy, whereby we now started subsidy, and the subsidy has become a conduit pipe for draining the economy of Nigeria. Now, the president having the courage to say enough is enough. And for one thing, we've said over time that Nigeria cannot continue with this arrangement. And not only the price regulation has impeded investment in the downstream sector in terms of refineries and some other facilities, but and now that the decision has been taken, we will now see a totally different downstream sector of Nigerian economy. It will then enable the private sector companies to invest and have the courage and the hope that they will be able to recover their cost of their investment and make decent returns. That is precisely what is happening. Unfortunately, many Nigerians don't really understand what is really going on, and I'm happy the media is taking the challenge by educating the Nigerian public. Many of our countrymen are playing politics with this policy. the president ought to be commended, and we should be looking at the positive side of this deregulation as against the negative side. For some time, we'll be having some problems, because if the products are being imported into the country as against refining crude oil in the country, there will still be a bit of problems, along the line, because once the price of petroleum crude oil goes up in the world market, it will correspondingly increase the price of petroleum products that we tend to import into the country. But over time, and if we are able to fix the refineries and thanks Dangote that is developing a refinery, a big refinery, by the time these refineries come on stream, then there will be, Nigeria will witness a totally different era of petroleum price regime in the country that will alleviate the problems of the people, and there will be competition whereby the oil marketing companies will not be able to exploit, Nigerian consumers, but that will be under the regulation of the Ministry of Petroleum Resources, as it used to be before the uniform pricing system was inaugurated in 1973.
Well, the biggest benefit the government seems to be touting here is that this will increase revenue for the government. But does it address associated corruption, inefficiency, and opaqueness in the downstream sector? Can we truly say that we have deregulated without enabling laws? The PIB is in limbo.
Well, you see, let's look at it this way. If government says it will increase revenue for government, at least for one thing we know, is that government will no longer pay subsidy, which has become a source of corruption. This is, many people have talked about it at length, so I don't need to bore you with all the details. But the money that government used to pump into subsidy, whether real or scam, that will no longer be there. So it's a savings, on the National Treasury about revenue. In terms of direct costs, then consumers will now bear responsibility. We'll always be saying, even not only in terms of COVID, we say Nigerian people have to take responsibility, for their lives and some of the things they are doing. So consumers, will now start to bear responsibility for the volume of petroleum products they consume, whether for petrol or some other petroleum products, they consume, whether diesel and things like that. But let me say this. The policy will not eradicate all the ills in the downstream sector. And this is what I want to emphasize. It also depends on how we Nigerians will behave ourselves, because more often than not, why Nigerians don't want to take responsibility for a number of things they do, positive or negative, they want government, they will put the blames on government. Some people, even when their wives don't get pregnant, they will blame it upon government, or they will want government to come and help them pregnate their wives. So this is the situation in which we find ourselves. Yes, we have some segments of the society that are actually suffering, but then if the economy is in a viable state, some of these people who don't have employment and their living conditions are downtrodden, will no longer be in that state. In other words, there will be upliftment, in the condition of living of some of these people. But government cannot provide everything for Nigeria. So the private sector, if we allowed the private sector to operate as it should be, without government, regulation, like we have seen in terms of petroleum products facing over time, that's still food, investment, then you will see improvement in the economy. Now, in terms of legislation, yes, as a matter of fact, many people believe that government should now put this into legislation, and that is why the importance of PIB cannot be overemphasized. And this regulation is coming shortly before the PIB is legislated upon. So one would expect that the PIB, when it is passed, eventually we incorporate some of the elements of the downstream petroleum, downstream of the regulation of the downstream. Now let's look at it in terms of other areas. The PIB is supposed to inaugurate a system of accountability and probity in the management of affairs of the oil and gas industry. Now, if we are able to put that in place, that is, the National Assembly passes the bill into law and the President gives a presidential assent, then we would then be able to see a totally different petroleum industry, both upstream and downstream, in terms of level of investment in the sector, and it will have overall benefits to the Nigerian people and the Nigerian economy. So this is what people have been clamoring for over time, and that it is coming now. Nigerians have to commend and appreciate the president for doing this.
But sir, are there certain outstanding issues that we also still need to focus on? Now we've been told that marketers and the NNPC would play on an open field. But there are issues. One, cost of funds, cost of forex, and also where does all of this leave the Petroleum Equalization Fund?
Well, let me start with Petroleum Equalization Fund. I would expect that by the time the downstream sector is in full swing, Petroleum Equalization Fund should be dispensed with. The genesis of Petroleum Equalization Fund was to provide, a bridging, bridging for moving products across the country, so that because we inaugurated uniform pricing system. Let me tell you this. I even have a table here that shows the price of petroleum products across the country before we set up, price equalization and uniform pricing system. The price was totally different from one place to the other. Let me give you an example. The price of petroleum product in Lagos was 4 shillings 5 pence. At that time, we hadn't started, naira currency. The price of gasoline, premium gasoline, we used to have 2 types of gasoline. That is premium, and then we have regular. Now, the price of premium gasoline was 4 shillings 5 pence, while in Badagry it was 4 shillings 7 pence. In Sapele it was 4 shillings 8 pence. In Warri it was 4 shillings 9 pence. In Agbo it was 4 shillings 9.5 pence. In Port Harcourt it was 4 shillings 6 pence. In Enugu it was 5 shillings. In Jos it was 5 shillings 3 pence. In Sokoto it was 5 shillings 10 pence. In Nguru it was 6 shillings. While in Maduguri it was 5 shillings 11 pence. So this price variation reflects the price of petroleum products across the country. Now, how did it work? The price of products, basically at when they were pricing either in Lagos, even before using Lagos as the basin point, or Port Harcourt when the refinery came on stream in 1965, we have the same basin point price. Now, what is added to the basin price is the cost of moving the product from one location to the other. The variation that I've mentioned in the table I read to you shows this transportation and handling expenses, across the country. Now, the price equalization was to ensure that the price of products, petrol sold in Lagos, is the same in Maiduguri, is the same in Sokoto, is the same in Port Harcourt. So it was the price equalization fund that tended to cushion the effect of this price variation. Now, if we are now, and the problem we've had with petroleum equalization fund over time, or bridging system over time, that it was supposed to be about 10% of the price of the product in the first instance. But at a certain time, we had 40%, as the bridging cost, which means that there was some, I won't say probably malpractices going on. There was a time the cost of bridging now almost equal the price of petroleum product itself. Can we actually say that it was a transparent process that increased bridging at that time? Bridging became an industry of its own, and this increased the burden of Nigerian people. So if we actually want to deregulate, there must be, the uniform pricing system must be dispensed with. Now, the way we were dispensed with this arrangement was when, at the time we were putting some of these things in place, there was no refinery in Kaduna. It was only Port Harcourt refinery we had, and then we were importing petroleum products into Lagos. Now, with the refinery in Kaduna, if that refinery was allowed to work, it was supposed to provide petroleum products that will be moved around the northern states. Then the second, Warri refinery was to provide petroleum products for the south. And then Port Harcourt in that axis. Yes, there will see some petroleum products from Port Harcourt refinery that will go to some nearby parts of northern states, and also Lagos. So it was in this respect that government at that time, in its wisdom, felt that we should be, over time, we'll be able to dispense with a uniform pricing system without creating any problem for Nigerian people. But what did we see? Over time, we abused all these things. The refineries were not working, so we were importing petroleum products. We are moving petroleum products from Lagos to different parts of the country. So bridging will be there, and price equalization had a full sway in terms of operation. So if we are then dispensing with price fixing, and we are dispensing with uniform pricing system, now price equalization fund will not be there. And with that process, we'll be able to save costs for government.
Right. I'd asked a question about the cost of forex, because now that marketers are also free to compete with NNPC, the cost of forex, the cost of funds, wouldn't that be an issue?
You see, the marketers know how to take responsibility for certain things. Now, when we were having seven marketing companies importing products into the country, the question of cost of funds never featured. They were bearing the responsibility, and that was part of the cost of the products at the what we used to call landed price of petroleum products. They were sourcing the products from their parent companies and from wherever they could get it. So at that time, it was working very well without anybody shouting about cost of funds. So obviously the companies, were actually spending money, and they had cost of funds, which was a paltry sum of money, a proportion of the cost of petroleum product, and did not rear its ugly head the way we are doing it here. Now, the marketing companies now who are importing petroleum products, to what extent are they transparent in terms of the cost of financing the importation of petroleum products? And to my own mind, any marketing company that is not in a position to bring in products at a competitive price that will make the price competitive for Nigerian public, you pack its bag and baggages, like we used to say, and go and fold up and let people who can actually do the business with all transparency and have the resources to do it at a reasonable cost. And these are some of the things that the Ministry of Petroleum and the Central Bank has to be looked into at the initial stage. But this kind of chaos can only happen between now and the time the refineries start to operate. By 2021 or thereabout, if God God willing, and the Dangote refinery is working. And indeed, if by 2022, the 3 or 4 refineries that government refineries are working, recently we had the good news of BUA trying to planning to establish another refinery in Akwa Ibom. So by the time all these refineries start to operate, then there will be no need for importation of petroleum products, whereby a marketer will be shouting that, oh, we have cost of fund, we have this and that. But be that as it may, between now and then, there has to be rationalization in terms of cost, because a lot of things could go into the cost of fund and other costs that marketers are putting on the price of petroleum products. Okay. And the Ministry of Petroleum Resources, as well as Central Bank, will have to do a lot in terms of verify some of these claims, because we may be having another subsidy, in the form of cost of fund and things like that.
Okay, sir. A lot of people have challenged that position, that if we have more refineries, price will reduce. In fact, I think the chairman of Fidelity Bank, Mustafa Chikeobi, did say that nothing goes down in Nigeria, that coming on stream of those refineries will not reduce, the pump price of premium motor spirit. What's your reaction to that, sir?
Well, I say the way it works is this. I've been a player in this business for about 5 decades. Now, when you take crude oil and you send it, a company buys crude oil and brings it to Rotterdam or to Caribbean or to wherever in Europe or to United States, they are taking Nigerian crude, for example, or take the crude from wherever, if they are not the producer, on FOB, some on CIF, that is cost, insurance and freight. Okay, the crude taken from Nigeria is FOB. It means that it is the buyer of the crude that will now pay the cost of insurance and freight to the refinery. Now, when the products are being brought back to Nigeria, the cost of product that we import into the country reflects the cost of transportation to when the crude is taken out there, and wherever the crude may be taken. If you are taking the crude from Middle East, or you are taking the crude from the Latin America, say Venezuela, Indonesia, or wherever, the refiner will have to include the cost of freight and other associated costs. Now, when you are pricing your product, then these other costs will have to be reflected, and it is this reflected price, the price that where we have embedded all these other costs that we have to bring into Nigeria. Now, if we are refining product locally, that is either Port Harcourt or Lagos or wherever, the cost of transportation will not be there. That is a cost-saving measure in terms of product price that will be consumed locally. So we will not have exactly the cost of products imported into the country and the one that is being refined locally. So if we are going to price accurately, then we cannot expect the price of petroleum product refined locally to be equal to the price of petroleum product imported into Nigeria. Yes, it may not be drastically reduced, but there will be some difference, because if there is no difference, then it means that there is some monkey business going on there. But when the time comes, let us wait and see, because we will then be able to examine the cost at which the refinery gets its crude and the processing fee that is put in on it, because the template is this. You have the cost of the crude, you have the processing fee that is charged to refine the crude, then the product will be taken from that refinery at S refinery gate price. then the cost of transportation will now have to be added. Either you are taken by road, you are taken by the railways, you are taken by coastal tankers, and so on, before you get it to the pumps. And then, of course, the marketing company will have to put some margin. So there is no way you can say that the price at that point from Kaduna refinery, from Warri refinery, from Lagos refinery, and wherever, will be the same as product prices brought from the Caribbean, from United States, from Rotterdam, or wherever. So that is, we have to understand that. Anybody saying that the price will be the same as imported price at that time, I would say that that is a bogus argument.
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Fawibe, for this insights on this topic that is of interest to every Nigerian at this moment. Thank you very much, sir.
You're welcome. Thank you.